Welcome to episode 36 of the Wealth Amplifier Podcast. Patrick Swift, welcome. How are you?
Doing well on this rainy, cold May day in Northeast. How you doing?
I'm fine. I hope a little bit better than Aaron Marks, who just landed from Vegas. Welcome back.
Sure, just waking up. Sorry. Yeah. All good here.
So, not only are you just waking up, but the listeners are going to have to deal with second podcast in a row of just the three of us because we decided there's enough going on in the world, especially with this tax bill being talked about, that the three of us would hop on an episode and then we'll start having guests again probably on the next one. So why don't we start there before we get to the taxes? Markets are a little different now than they were when we last recorded. It's been an interesting few weeks here. Any initial thoughts or comments?
Boring year. Nothing's happened, right?
That's right. Markets are flat. Stocks are flat. Bonds are flat-ish. Yeah,
you don't want to be the told you so guy, and the told you so guy is wrong plenty of times. But and not that we were saying, hey, it's all going to be fine in a month, but yeah, it's the reason you don't overreact. It could be a lot better. It could be a lot worse, and you don't know. And being overconfident can really hurt. And here we are, where if you fell asleep for a few months, you wouldn't have known anything happened.
Which might have been the best possible way to handle the last few months, to just take a big nap, which is always easier said than done.
Yeah, I mean, what did we? I guess at the high of the year, the markets were up maybe in the U.S. maybe 5%, give or take. And at the lows, they were down, getting close to, I guess, from the top, they were down about 20 from the year to date. Maybe they got down to, down 15, but basically a 20% range in a couple months to be right back where we started. So tongue in cheek, boring if you took a nap for 4 months, a little white knuckle and stressful if you were hanging on every basis point move, which we advise against.
Let me ask you guys this. Maybe we're past the best and worst parts of the tariff tantrum we've seen. If you were betting on the rest of the year, do you think we still have more volatility ahead of us that's not tariff related?
It's always hard to know that one.
Right.
I'd say yes, because it always, if we knew what was coming, then we'd all be prepared all the time, and
right,
stuff happens. So yeah, I'm sure. I don't know if it'll be like it was. What was that one day where it bounced back up 10% in a day? I'd hope we're not getting any down 5% or up for 5% in a day, but certainly some up 5 and down 5 in a month. That's, I don't want to say normal, but sort of business as usual.
Yeah, I think so. I think you phrased the question well. I think we will get more volatility, and I do think it will likely be about something other than tariffs. Not to say this tariff issue is over, but I have a feeling we're on a bit of a chaos roller coaster here, and my guess is the next stop will be something other than tariffs.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, if we're looking at catalysts, which are, to your point, Aaron, very difficult to put our finger on, but we talked about a month ago, whenever we were last on the podcast, that it's sort of the unknown of what comes next, and now we at least know. We have the answer to what did come next at this point, but now I think we're still waiting on how much, the assessment of what damage was done, which has still been kicked around. I think June will start to bear that out in the economic data. We always talk about how markets are forward-looking, economic data backward-looking. Do you think if there's, what level of terrible economic data could be reported that actually would make people rethink how markets are priced? Like, do you think that that's a possibility, that we get blowout terrible economic numbers for May or something like that totally disrupts the current trajectory of capital markets?
I sort of want to say yes and no. I think you could definitely get the consumers aren't spending, trade's not going well, but I think there's always going to be optimism in some sense that, we're going to sort it all out and it's going to be fine. And the consumer is resilient, even times that we've seen the U.S. consumer not have some resiliency. It's bounced back quickly. So yeah, I don't know if that's the big impetus for the up 5, down 5% a day kind of move.
I think, similar to what we talk about with markets in general, They trade on better or worse, not good or bad. My guess is expectations got a little too low maybe a month or two ago, and maybe they're a little too complacent now, and there was some actual damage done. So I think to your point, Pat, when we start seeing the data come in, there could be a reaction. And then I think the other piece to that, and I don't want to be reductive, but when it comes to the economy, you mentioned, I think Aaron mentioned the consumer. Ultimately, if jobs numbers stay strong, I think we'll be fine because the consumer will have a paycheck and they will keep spending because that's what Americans do. If they have money, they spend it. However, if companies, because of this or other reasons, start cutting hiring, wages, et cetera, we could be in for some rocky times in the economy.
If Las Vegas is any indication, people are spending.
People are spending.
Let me tell you.
There were a lot of headlines that Vegas had been struggling. I guess not according to your experience.
Well, look, this is actually the first time I've ever been there. It was a lot of people. Convention center was full. There were concerts going on. I don't really know how that compares to any other weekend, but plenty of people spending plenty of money from my view.
Yeah, that's the economic adage. Pay attention to what people are doing, not what they're saying, because I think the Michigan survey, whoever does that survey of consumer sentiment I saw is actually for April was at an all-time low or near historical lows. But to your point, the data around spending has not been congruent with that sentiment. So,
and look, it's not maybe applicable as to what the entire country is feeling. If you're going to Las Vegas, like by default, you are going there, meaning you are spending money to get there. You're not going if you don't want to spend money. I don't know who wasn't there. I don't know what the rest of the country feels like. Right. At least in a bubble, things seemed fine.
One stat I was going to just throw out there that I'm going to butcher like always. We're not exactly statisticians on this podcast, but we're good sentiment and vibe guys. And I heard this on another discussion, but advisors like us, we talk a lot about to clients, you want time in the market, right? You want to keep money invested throughout good and bad markets to earn long-term returns versus timing, trying to get in and out at the right times. This last month and a half, even more microscopic, example of that, where we had a couple of days, to your point, Aaron, really bad, a couple of days that were really good. And I think I saw the stat, or if you had missed that 10% up day, and I think the day that the China tariff deal-ish was announced, you'd be year to date in stocks, you'd be down like more than 10% still. Versus if you just stayed invested since January 1st, basically, you're basically flat. You're right where you started.
Yep.
So important thing to just you can't miss those big days.
We are starting a new feature at Amplius of trying to get out some content of chart of the week, not to steal Sean's thunder on our team who's been working on that. But I have a feeling the next chart's going to be pretty similar to what you just said, Pat.
Oh, nice. I didn't even know that. I didn't even have the entire information.
Yes. I have the insight there. So
nice.
Can I just bring up one piece of market data before it obviously changes in a month? How about international stocks at the moment?
I know. Which is something we keep talking about.
IEFA, so is that just developed markets?
Yeah, developed.
Year to date, up almost 18%.
Yep. Bull market and diversification. It's here we are.
I bring it up now because
someone listens. I don't know.
Yeah, next month. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and what's I think notable about that is like U.S. stocks really started to pick up steam the last couple of weeks of April, generally speaking, the last week of April. And it's not like you had a corresponding pullback in international equities. They're not up as much over that short couple of week period. But I think I was just looking from like late April, that same index you just referenced, Aaron, still up probably 8%. So it's not like the wind has been taken out of international stocks just because we've started to see some more positive news in the U.S.
Yep.
So let's talk about taxes. Everybody's favorite.
Yeah.
topic.
So let's talk about taxes, right? There's the new headline, at least that I've been seeing away from just tariff related stuff, is there is a big, beautiful bill in Washington right now.
Wait, was that an
being
attempt of a
circulated.
Trump impersonation?
No, it was not a Trump attempt. It was just a sort of mocking the rhetoric behind the bill.
No, your tone suggested a little Trumpiness. There
No,
so,
I'll try. If I do a Trump impression, I'll try a little harder. But
okay, fair enough.
no, yeah. So the big beautiful bill. What do you guys think? So it's in proposal right now. Just to give us context, nothing has been passed. Nothing's been agreed to, even within the Republican Party. So there's still got a ways to go here, but some interesting proposals, some interesting tidbits.
Yeah, so I guess just setting the table for a moment. Why are we here for what? Like, why are they trying to pass a big beautiful bill, as they call it? And I'd say the main reason is because they passed a big bill 8 years ago. Was it 2017? Many of the provisions expire at the end of this year. So without either big beautiful bill or limited bill or some bill, taxes are going to go up a lot at the end of the year. So I think that's the primary motivation right now.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that last point. But yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm sure clients and everyone remembers us talking about the last year or so is, what does tax legislation look like? Well, it's largely dependent on the outcome of the 2024 election. And, here we are now where the proposal's in and we'll see if it passes. But anything stand out specifically? I know there's kind of two parts to it, right? There's the tax legislation, and then there's some political stuff that's going on as a result of that. But on the tax side, on just the legislation and the changes itself, what do you guys find, if anything, or even if we just want to go through some of the specifics?
So let me just say anecdotally, what do we feel? It's hard to remember old times, but I seem to recall in that 2017 timeframe, it was every day we were, what are tax rates going to be? And, oh man, this is a big change. And how's this going to affect things? And now it's sort of just like, all right, it's around the edges, we'll sort it all out. It'll be fine. And maybe that's because we're just trying to extend and renew a lot of the stuff that's in place already, where 8 years ago, it was putting it all in place to start. And it was such a big change. But I feel there's less conversation, less on the edge of your seat, hearing what's coming out because it's
less enthusiasm.
Right.
To me, the two most attention-grabbing components to it, at least as it relates, one relates more to our world and one relates to Aaron's world as a Vegas guy. So the one that relates to our world, we have a lot of clients in high-tax states, New Jersey, New York. Pat, you live in New Jersey, New York. We have some in California as well, but not as much as New Jersey and New York. And they are talking about raising the deduction cap on what they call SALT, state and local taxes. And what was it prior to 2017? Do you remember what that cap? I know it's now 10,000. Do you remember what it was before they changed it?
Wasn't it 20 some? I could be completely wrong.
No, there were. I mean, the whole gist, I could find out. The whole gist prior to 2017 was there were more personal exemptions and deductions. Right. And the 2017 Act did away with most, if not all of them, and then just blanket raised the standard deduction. Now, the state and local tax deduction, you only get if you're itemizing your deductions, which includes only a handful of things at this point. So I think, and I guess we should check real quick while we're talking about it, I think in those high tax states, that's why it's such a high press issue, is you could deduct a large majority of what you were paying in state taxes if you lived in those states.
Right. If you were itemizing, right. And then they capped it at 10,000 now. And that's one of the big negotiating points. These sort of Republicans in the blue states, if you will, are the ones advocating to lift that cap from 10,000 to, let's say, 30, 40 or beyond, and are allegedly not going to vote for the bill unless they get that or something like it. And so that could have a big impact on our clients and listeners in those states. And just throw out the second one that was a little more game changing. I was referencing Aaron's trip to Vegas, is this whole idea of no tax on tips, which was a campaign promise from Trump. I imagine, though he didn't consult with me on political strategy, but had a lot to do with trying to win Nevada, which was one of the 7 swing states where a lot of compensation comes in the form of tips. But those are two pretty big changes if they go through. Yeah,
pretty big changes. And just confirming, prior to Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, in 2017, residents in those big tax states could deduct everything on their federal return. So there was no cap. Those are the two big ones. And I saw just this morning when we were getting ready to come in, the initial proposal had 30K. That's a big one where I guess, Republicans in those states essentially, they want to get reelected when the midterms come up. So they want to push hard on that issue for their constituents in New York and California and New Jersey. So they've raised it, at least in the proposal, to 40K. Yeah, I mean, look, personally, I'd love for that to happen as a new resident of Jersey. Yeah, and then no tax on tips, overtime pay. Aaron, go ahead.
So what does it all mean? 10 years down the line, does this do anything? Does it help? Does it hurt? Or do you need to, I gotta imagine this isn't as big and beautiful as some would have liked. Like if you really want to make change, you really need to piss some people off. And sort of we're like appeasing everybody, which means, as Matt, we talked about earlier, business as usual, and we'll do it a little bit around the edges and we'll all have a bigger deficit down the road. And somebody down the road is going to have to piss some people off to really get things in line.
To me, that's the key takeaway, is that the whole idea coming in was between tariffs bringing in revenue, allegedly, deregulation leading to more growth. We'll see. There's some history of that. And then these this tax reform or big beautiful bill, there was an idea that we were going to stem the tide, and going along with this was DOGE and all the spending cuts, stem the tide of these growing deficits, which keep growing under every administration, but they've really been ramped up under the last 2 or 3, actually. 4. Actually, I can keep going. Basically since 2000, they've really been ramping up. And it doesn't look like, to me, there's anything in this bill that's going to do a whole lot to lower deficits. So I think we are going to be right back there with someone's going to have to deal with that at some point. But it doesn't look like it's going to be this bill unless something changes. Yeah.
Well, Matt, let me ask you that. Does it matter? Like, I know this is a charged question, right?
Do deficits matter?
No. Well, not just that in a specific question, but the Wall Street Journal, all these publications analyze the crap out of proposals and legislation like that, as they should. And there's all this, projections that, 10 years from now, here's exactly how much the deficit is going to increase. There's going to be potentially 2 more administrations between now and 10 years from now. So that's kind of my question. Is like, does some of these projections matter as much, or are they really just like political tools for posturing?
It's a fair question, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on it, but
it's a hard question to hit you with.
But I do think tax policy and spending policy and regulatory policy matter in terms of economic growth, mood, sentiment, and so on. And capital expenditures are another big part of this, as far as expensing, depreciation. We're sort of speculating. We don't know what the final bill is going to look like. But I think going back to the deficit for a minute, I would say it actually, to a large degree, this type of bill, to Aaron's point about business as usual, doesn't matter a whole lot. We have a bipartisan consensus in this country, by action, maybe not by rhetoric, that all we do is grow our deficits and grow our debt. Mm-hmm. And so does that ultimately matter? I would argue at some point it does. If you look where interest rates have been going recently, it's starting to matter because more and more of our budget is going just to pay interest on our debt right now.
Right.
And that's fewer things we can pay for. And then ultimately the solution, not to go on a soapbox here, but the solution to all of that deficit, debt, and so on, there aren't that many choices. It's just math. You either raise taxes a lot, and some people have suggested that. My argument to that would be you'll run out of rich people before you run out of debt, and it's just not, the math isn't going to work. Right. You could cut spending. How's that working out for everybody? There hasn't been much meaningful spending cut in decades, but maybe they could try again. Right. Or more likely, the third lever they're going to pull is the one that has the short-term path to least resistance, which is, frankly, monetize the debt, print a whole lot of money, and pay people back with cheaper dollars. And I have a feeling that's the path we're headed down, because that's the path we always sort of head down.
Yeah, well, it's the right path of least resistance in our system. I think a lot of what's been talked about, I mean, Trump was down sort of playing whipping boy, trying to get everybody in line to vote for the bill yesterday, largely because if he doesn't, his economic agenda is more or less ruined, right? He's very unpopular, sort of just mathematically speaking, on what's going on with the tariff so far. Doesn't get the tax bill passed. We're sitting here back under basically a tax rate increase environment. That'd be the worst possible thing. That's basically political dynamite for year one for Trump. If you guys had a handicap, I guess 2-part question. What are the chances Tax Cuts Jobs Act is sunsetted at 2025? We don't have new tax legislation. And what's the result on, I guess, Trump presidency and our economy and our system?
I'd imagine it's a high likelihood that things get extended and renewed, but everything will keep getting trimmed until people are happy. And nothing will happen. Nothing will change. Just keep going down the same path. I don't know if I answered your question there, but I think the
you think
taxes as they are get yes, it will just keep getting scaled back until it's nothing meaningful.
I think they're going to pass a bill. They don't have a big majority. They don't have much margin for error. But I think they're going to pass a bill for the reason you said, Pat. I would think the economic agenda, which is usually the most important agenda to a lot of voters, the economic agenda of this presidency, if they don't pass a bill, it's hard to imagine that we're going to avoid a recession. Because you essentially have a tax hike on top of what's already a somewhat teetering economy because of the tariff stuff, in my opinion. So I think they will come together and pass a bill. And I think, to Aaron's point, it will probably not be the type of bill that is a long-term game changer, but that's my best guess.
Well, go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was just saying, sooner or later, we're running into that 90-day window of we're going to figure out all these tariffs. And man, if something doesn't get done sooner or later, it's going to, when we said there's not going to be up 5 and 10% days.
Maybe we're back.
They're going to be right back here if we don't start figuring things out.
Well, so on time rise, that's what I was just going to ask Matt. Matt, sorry I keep putting you on the hot seat. I like the way you think about this stuff, and I think the audience does too. But on that same question around the tax proposal, do you think there's a time limit? Like, you think hey, they need to get something in place by August, September, because if it keeps going back tit for tat within the House or whoever, where's the point of no return where it's like nothing's getting passed if you had to handicap that?
Yeah, so I think there's sort of using a basketball metaphor, there's a political shot clock and then there's a market, an economic shot clock. I think if, they've thrown out the date that they want to get something passed by around July 4th. Obviously, July 4th has a lot of symbolism, in the country beyond just being a date on the calendar. It is Independence Day and so on. My guess is, from a market standpoint, markets will be disappointed if things are not moving towards passage by sometime over the summer. From a political shot clock perspective, I would argue we still have pretty much till the end of the year. A, because that's when the bill expires, and B, usually the president gets, let's say, 9 to 12 months at the beginning of his presidency before everybody starts talking about the midterms. And also Congress has motivation. I could be wrong, I don't think they want to go back to their districts with either a lousy bill or no bill, come next year. So I'd say market-wise, I think our window is get it done this summer before markets start to get a little cranky. And I think politically, you probably get most of the fall as well.
That's why we ask you the hard-hitting questions, Matt, because it gives us some good context to think about.
And I do think, as far as market and politics bringing them together, Scott Bessent, who seems to be the most important person in the country these days, and I might even be mispronouncing his name, I don't know if it's Bessent, either way. I can't imagine if there are no deals in the 90 days, like Aaron mentioned, they don't pass this bill. I imagine Scott Bessent's going to be getting kind of cranky as well. He seems to have a lot of sway. So hopefully he can at least steer this to the best possible outcome, given the ones that are on the table. But we'll see.
We'll obviously be watching that closely as things get passed. Clients want to talk about, the specifics of the bill and all that kind of stuff. We're more than happy to do that. Provide some content as things come out.
We'll probably have on one of our friends from the accounting industry once we have an official bill to have them, run down the pros and cons as well. But felt that was premature because the bill could change 10 times between now and then.
So should we shift to Aaron? You want to tell us about Vegas, about how things were out there?
And don't leave out why you were there to begin with. I think
important milestone.
The big 40, 40th birthday. was a good celebration. It was my wife and I and another couple, roommate from college, birthday for him, birthday for me, anniversary, all good things. So it was a good celebratory trip. It is quite a place. I mean, if you want to do it up and go to the best restaurants, it's going to be the best food you've had in your life kind of thing. And they're from New York. They're the other friends that we were with. They're saying every restaurant that you cannot get into in New York, they have in Las Vegas, and you can get into easier. And it's just as good. So we ate our faces off. It was unbelievable. Went to a couple shows. You could go wild off the deep end in Las Vegas, and you could just have a nice regular old vacation and sit by the pool and go out to dinner and go home. And it's everywhere in between it's possible. And I can see plenty of other people that did go off that deep end, rolling into the hotel like 8 a.m. And, it was a fun time. It really was.
Where did you guys fall in the going off the deep end to easy family vacation?
We were swimming when you're in the pool and it gets a little deper. We were swimming towards the deep end, but we're still on the top end of the water. We're able to come back and walk out.
You can still touch with your tippy toes.
Right, on your toes.
I like that. That's a good kind of ground to cover.
I left with more money in my wallet than I did when I got there.
That's a
major win. I was walking, not a lot of money. I was walking out of the casino at the end of the night, pumping my fist for making like $2. I was like, even if I would have it was dead flat, I would have been thrilled.
Now, was that like casino games or sportsbook?
A little bit of both. Sportsbook was like $20 here and there. I was even on that. And then blackjack was the grand finale. And a little roulette too. I probably had like 8 or 10 spins, and I hit on 2 numbers within 8 or 10. So that was good.
That's a thrill. Yeah.
That's a way to lose some money fast. Roulette.
Just see ya.
And I go to a casino once every 1, 2, 3 years. It is not frequent, but every time you go, there's a little change that they make to put it more in the casino's favor. So you know how they used to have the single zero, then they had the double zero. Maybe they've always had a double zero. Now they have another green one. So now there's 3 spots that you can maybe not win on. Right. So it just keeps going.
Like Wirehouse is chipping away at compensation. So
that's right.
Just a little bit at a time.
Yep. Right. Pat, anything you have either reading, watching, seeing, or something you're looking forward to coming up in the summer?
I'll take the latter. I'm going to be out in Jackson Hole for a really good friend's wedding the last week of June. Been out there one other time. Very excited to go. I think I've told you guys I think of myself as a bit of a child of the Midwest. I like the mountains, I like the mountainous regions. So yeah, I'm excited to get out there. Should be a good time. In about a month from now, basically.
Great. Well, I guess I'll just wrap then. I am going to your favorite region, to your favorite city in a couple of weeks, Denver, and then on to Aspen for a conference with our friends in the Dynasty Financial Partners Network. And as I think I mentioned on the last pod, but going finally to get to Red Rocks. So I'm stopping in Denver for one night on the way there to go to Red Rocks, where I've always wanted to go, and then on to Aspen for the conference. So it should be good.
It's going to be a great trip. Remind the listeners again who you're seeing at Red Rocks.
All right. So it's a weird thing. I'm only going to be in Denver for one night. And I have a friend that I grew up with from high school who lives in Denver who's going to go with me. We happened to be seeing that night a band, Big Head Todd and the Monsters. For those of you who are, let's say, my age roughly, in the 90s, they were reasonably big and toured. I saw them, and Dave Matthews opened up for them at the Tower Theater in Philadelphia. I want to say circa 95. And I went with the same guy that I'm coincidentally going with in Denver. Even though we didn't plan this, it's just like, I'm going to be in town. What's playing at Red Rocks? Let's go. And he's like, remember that band, Big Head Todd? So it's not like we're like diehard fans, but we will have seen them in 2 different cities 30 years apart. And we'll see.
That's hilarious. It's kind of a nice coincidence versus like, I don't know, some pop star that you don't care about is playing at Red Rocks the night you're there.
Right. Like I will know a handful of songs. I won't know their whole catalog to the extent they have. I don't know what their catalog looks like, but I'll know a handful of their set lists.
Nice.
All right. We'll see everybody on an episode soon, and likely with a couple guests coming up this summer.
Awesome. Hope everybody has a wonderful Memorial Day weekend coming up here.
Yes. You too.
All right.
Thanks,
See you
everyone.
guys.
Thanks.
Bye.